For more than a century, residents and wary visitors traveling the old roads and wild country surrounding the small town of Fouke, Arkansas, have claimed to see some kind of tall, hairy, man-like thing lurking in the trees. An entity that defies rational explanation, yet makes its presence known just when you think it may never re-emerge. The creature, something of a Bigfoot or wild man, has become known as the Fouke Monster, gaining an unlikely popularity due to its starring role in the most successful Bigfoot movie of all time, The Legend of Boggy Creek. If you have an interest in cryptids and follow my channel, I'm sure you are familiar with it. And while we're talking about my channel, please like and subscribe. I don't like interrupting my videos to even say this, but it's necessary if I'm going to be able to keep bringing you quality content. Anyway, the majority of Fouke Monster sightings have taken place in or near the Sulphur River bottoms, a vast wetland located a few miles south of Fouke. Deriving its name from the Sulphur River, the bottoms spread across miles of woodlands that include the nearly 20,000-acre Sulphur River Wildlife Management Area, one of the last remaining tracts of untouched habitat along the Red River Valley. The land here is covered with dense patches of hardwoods, cypress brakes, oxbow lakes, and a spidery network of tributaries, which includes the legendary Boggy Creek. If there was ever a prime place to conceal a mystery or to hide a throwback to another time, these bottoms must surely be it. Even today, the area contains large pockets of swampland and forestry that are difficult to access. The sparse county roads often dead-end into the river or swamps, where one would need to trade wheels for a sturdy canoe or a pirogue in order to continue the journey. Standing waters in places such as Mercer Bayou extend in all directions from the Sulphur River, holding the land captive and wholly undesirable for modern development. Looking out over the Sulphur River bottoms from the air, it's easier to grasp just how vast the area is. The treetops extend for miles in an endless canopy, while the rivers and creek beds weave through the land like giant watery snakes. If something wanted to hide there, it would not be hard, especially if the species exists in few numbers and has an affinity for surviving beyond the reach of civilization. It is here, close to the Sulphur River, where I saw something extraordinary in the spring of 2024, something that I believe may have been the legendary Fouke Monster. I've spent countless hours, days and nights, exploring the backcountry of Fouke over the years, and have heard and seen some very unusual things, even other possible sightings. But on this occasion, I was afforded my best glimpse of something that matches well with the hundreds of reports made by others since the turn of the 20th century. I had previously been in Fouke on April 3, 2024, exploring an area near Snake Lake with my girlfriend, who also has an affinity for outdoor adventures. That afternoon, we found several large tracks that looked like they could have been left by someone or something with a long stride walking barefoot through the muddy outlands. The tracks were not fresh, and toe detail was debatable, but the tracks did not show evidence of molded footwear or boot treads, so they were worth casting. During our excursion, we also found 4 small hog skulls laid out near another swampy lake close to the Sulphur River. I suspected that the skulls had been placed there by someone hoping to get a scare next time somebody hiked by in the woods, but I could not be certain. It was very unusual at the very least, so I took a photo. After returning home, I was messaging with a fellow researcher who mentioned that when he and some friends were in Fouke about 5 months earlier, they had come across what appeared to be a purposeful bone pile near the location where I'd found the skulls. They could see bones of hog and deer in the pile. Hunters will often shoot hogs and leave their bodies, These animals have become a huge problem in Arkansas over the last decade, so I wasn't too surprised those kinds of bones would be there. But I found it odd that the bone pile would include those of deer, since hunters typically take the body for processing when they harvest one. Perhaps one of the mysterious Bigfoot-like creatures had been responsible for the skeletal remains. It was a thought that definitely crossed my mind. A few weeks later, I had the opportunity to return to Fouke, so I figured I would attempt to find the bone pile just to take a look for myself. On the morning of April 25th, 2024, I arrived in Fouke with my girlfriend April. Later that afternoon, we met our friend Glenn Haskins at a campground where he was staying for the weekend. He wanted to join us in the hunt for the bones. We weren't sure what the bones would tell us even if we found them, but it seemed like a good excuse to hike into the backwoods to look for anything unusual we might come upon. And to make it even more worthwhile, this is an area with a long history of Fouke monster sighting reports, especially in the last decade. After gearing up with snake boots and a few supplies, we set out walking. The substrate along the bank is soft with peat mud, so it's a challenge, but there's some higher ground between the edge of the lake and a small creek that runs parallel to it. Glenn and April scanned the muddy areas along the creek for animal tracks while I trudged through the muck at the edge of the lake, looking for any sign of the bones. The weather was excellent that day, so we enjoyed being outside, especially in the serene surroundings of Fouke. As the narrator says in the Legend of Boggy Creek, Fouke is a right nice place, till the sun goes down. That may be true in some cases, but I love the area day or night, even when far into the bottoms at night with only moonlight as a guide. We hiked for the better part of the day, progressing far from the camp and around the circumference of the lake where the woods spread out undisturbed and eventually meet with the Sulphur River. I had rarely trekked through that part of the area on foot, where the trappings of civilization seem furthest away. The woods here are alive with nature, yet oddly somber and lonely. The outside world means little to the silent cypress that stand there, just as they have for hundreds of years. It was getting late in the day as the afternoon began to wind down for the onset of evening. We had failed to locate the bone pile, though I had looked thoroughly along the muddy expanse. The water level of the lake was higher from spring rains than it had been 5 months earlier, so perhaps the bones were now submerged. We were about to turn and head back, having given up on the prospect of finding the bones and anticipating some food after so many hours of hiking. April and Glenn had stopped 15 to 20 yards behind me and were talking, while I walked ahead in the woods with no particular destination. I noticed what looked like a path or maybe a game trail which went up a slight incline, so I decided to walk up it, if for no other reason that it was easy to traverse. I was walking up it when I heard what sounded like something moving through the brush to my right. I stopped and turned to look. That's when I saw it. So I was walking up this trail right here, and I heard something moving in the brush. There's a lot of leaf cover around here, so anything walking makes a little bit of noise. I had been rather quiet, and that's one reason I went up this sort of open trail back here. I was trying to move as quietly as I could. That's just what I do in the woods. And when I heard something, of course, my attention turned in that direction. And it was about, I would say, 35 yards away, give or take. And what I first saw looked dark, and it was kind of low. And I thought first I was observing a wild hog, and it was coming out of the underbrush. But quickly thereafter, I could see what looked like a leg and then a full body. The entire thing walked across a clear area, and it was probably maybe 3 to 4 seconds at best. And in that time period, I observed it. You know, you see something walking on two legs, you know, your mind goes from it's a hog to it's a person,
to know that is not a person. It was uniformly black in color. It was very dark. It was getting towards evening, so visibility was still really good, but it was a little shadowy down in these woods. And I could see the full body, and I observed it in that time period. I could see there was no clothing, there was no difference in the color of the hands. There was no head cover or hat. I mean, this was not a person. And I would estimate that it was probably around 7 feet tall, because it looked pretty big even at the distance I was. So it had to be fairly tall. And then it just went out of sight and in this dense brush. And from then I couldn't see it, and I didn't hear it walking anymore.
In those moments, I came to the stark realization that I was seeing what so many others had reported over the years, a dark silhouette of something that was neither human nor ape. It happened so fast I could not get a good sense of any facial detail, nor the exact length of its hair. It did not hesitate or turn in my direction, so I'm not sure if it even knew I was there. I had been walking quietly, as I always do while exploring, but April and Glenn were talking, so it certainly could have heard them. Either way, it went out of sight, and I could no longer hear it walking in the leaves. I felt an adrenaline surge. My heart pumped wildly. I had an iPhone in my pocket, but in that unexpected moment, I could not have gotten it out for a photo, nor did I even think of it. I could only stand in awe, trying to process just what I was seeing. I quickly closed the gap between myself and my cohorts and tried to quickly yet quietly explain what I had seen. It took several moments to get it across to them, but they soon realized it was no joke. At that point, we began walking in the direction of where I last saw the figure in the trees, looking left, right, and forward for any signs of movement. We heard something moving off in the brush, but could not see it. We then fanned out, each looking in every direction. After about 5 minutes of looking, we realized it was probably hopeless. The thing had simply eluded us.
We started coming up on the ridge to go over and see what it was he was looking at. We heard something rustle off through the woods over that way, but we never did get an actual visual on it. But we did hear something moving off in the woods, and that's when Lyle started going down the hill, and we followed him and went down there to see what we could find.
Between the sighting and going over to tell them that I'd seen something and trying to do it as discreetly and quietly as I could, of course, there's my footsteps in the leaves. There was some talking and some movement. So all I can speculate is that in the time period it told that I told them what was going on, it just heard us and was alerted to our presence, and it just took off somewhere in some direction unknown.
And just like that, my brief glimpse at something that could have very well have been the legendary monster or one of its kind was over. After so many years of hopeful searching with my eyes and my mind open, I was still no closer to solving a mystery that so many like myself have sought to understand. The brief encounter left me with more questions than answers, and a lingering desire to see the thing again. Glenn camped overnight in the spot where we met that day to embark on our hike. He was joined by another friend of ours who camped close to his site. As they were talking that night around 1 a.m., Glenn caught sight of an upright figure as it ran across an open area in the moonlight. Could it have been the very same thing I saw earlier that evening? Our sightings were admittedly brief, and neither Glenn nor myself can say exactly what kind of entity or entities we saw that day. We can only state the facts of our experiences and leave all else to conjecture. What I can say with certainty is that what I experienced is similar to what countless others have reported in the area of Fouke and the surrounding Sulphur River bottoms over the years. A sighting of something that walks the line between light and shadow, between legend and reality.